Hey, 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 what's up, Crown Nation? Welcome to Rock the Crown. Guess what we are doing today? We are going to be talking about the Woman King. It's your girl, Queen Naima, and I'm here with my girl, Queen Nefertari, and our two special guests, Yasmin and Carol. What's up, ladies?
What's
Amen.
up?
This is
All
gonna
right,
be an
all right,
awesome
all right.
conversation.
Oh, honey, this is going to be so rich. If you don't have one, go get your spoon because you're going to be eating this up, okay? So, again, we are going to be talking about The Woman King. We have so many movies out right now that are kind of like, real spirited. So, we have Wakanda Forever again, right? And then, of course, last night, if you were watching FX, honey, they were showing Black Panther.
Mhm.
Okay, just on regular TV. Like, okay, are we doing that now? Okay, well, thank you so much. And then, of course, we did have The Woman King come out a couple of months ago. But let me tell you, this movie is still resonating, right? And I know that we have some of those skeptics out there because I've heard people say, oh, I'm not going to watch any movie that's calling a woman a king and all this other stuff. But context, right?
Mhm.
Context is everything. And again, this movie is inspired by the real life Dahomey female warriors, the Agoji, who were formed in the 1700s. The 1700s, people, okay?
Wow.
And they became the legendary fighters. We should note that this movie is not not a biography. Okay, so yeah, everything in this movie is not necessarily true. Besides the fact that the Dahomey female warriors did exist, but this can be seen as a woman's quest for autonomy and actualization. And I know sometimes people are like, "Oh, women are always trying to get rights and all that stuff." We need some rights, okay? We need some rights. Okay, so yes, we are searching for women's autonomy and actualization in this. And of course, the Woman King boldly unsettles the traditional spectacle of patriarchy. And not because the women fight, right? With all this beautiful skill and might with their bodies and all of this, the ropes and the machetes and all this other stuff, but because the most radical thing is that the love and intimacy between the sisterhood and the women, the collective power of this is so bold, right? Did anybody see the movie The Red Tent? Has anybody seen that before?
Mm-mm.
Okay, well, The Red Tent is this somewhat of the similar story, but basically that is a biblical story, but it talks about, women and their power to come together, especially during their menses, and women would sit and coddle each other and take care of each other while they're, having their menses. And it was called The Red Tent. It's actually, I believe it's the story of Rebecca. So make sure if you haven't seen that, that's something else to go back and look at. It's not necessarily with all African women, but it is women of the Bible. So if you're interested in that, and then of course we have so many different other stories from different faith-based type stories as well as cultural. But tonight, again, we're talking about Dahomey. So let's start it off. We are going to start off basically by talking about from the perspective of we are not, number one, historians at all. Okay, none of us are historians, but we again are only talking about the Dahomey women from the perspective of we know that they existed in the 1700s. But what we're about to talk about now is some of the quotes and some of the concepts in the movie,
Mm.
right? Ooh, it's about to get so good. And so we want to start off with and of course, some of this stuff is actual chronological, how the movie actually lays itself out. But again, we want to start off with the women, not just the women warriors, right? So first thing off, let me just say this: if you haven't seen this movie, don't watch this show. Okay, if you haven't seen this movie,
Right.
do not watch this show yet until you've seen the movie. But starting off with, it's a gathering of men, right? And they're all in their intuitive or not intuitive spirit. They're getting ready to eat or whatever they're about to do. And then the women rain down, right? The women just come out the bushes, honey, and then you're good. So The first scene, I was sitting with a male, and the first thing he said was, "Man, these women are ruthless."
Mm.
Interesting.
Exactly. Interesting. So, what do y'all think about that perspective of like when women are coming in to kill and to capture and bring back their people, that's seen as a sign of ruthlessness?
Yeah, I mean, it immediately makes me think of the movie Gladiator. You know, when we
Mhm.
saw all that killing initially, and it was just immediate, and it was people cheering, and oh my God, look how powerful they are, and look at the skill and all of that. It's just an expectation for women to be weak all the time. So for people to see that, they were just probably blown away. And that comes from a lack of knowledge of the Dahomey women and women all over the world who are in positions of power and positions where they're defending and fighting. You know, people are not used to seeing women like that. So I'm assuming that the man you were sitting next to is probably a person like that. It was just like, what the hell is going on here? What is happening and why is this happening? Kind of thing. Because it's common, you know, especially in movies, that you don't see women portrayed that way. So
Yeah.
I love that it started that way because that's
Right.
Mhm.
what the movie was about. So
You know, it was
Yeah.
about when you were talking, Naima. I really didn't think about this until right this moment, but it made me think about Harriet Tubman, really, like,
Mm.
because in her own right, she was a warrior. She was like ruthless in a way, but in the good way. You know, when you want to use that word, like we'll take that. You know, we can
Yeah.
use that word and move with it, but there's some positive attributes about it. The other thing is just when we think about our nature as women and men and how, you know, men are our protectors and maintainers, so they kind of look to take on this role naturally. So when you start to see a woman, you know, increase her masculinity, you know, it's going to feel that way to them as far as like, okay, there's something not quite fitting right about this. But at the same time, if we have to step up and be on the front line, we're very creative to do that. You know,
Hmm.
that's how
Carol.
it goes to me.
Well, I went with my husband man to go see it, and it was the opening scene to me was really set the tone for the movie.
Hmm.
Um, because for us to, for number one, for a pack of women to go in and attack a strong pack of men, something got to make us mad to do that because we are naturally.
okay.
Okay,
Right.
I don't care. This ain't got nothing to do with women's rights, all that feminism and all that.
Right.
Something had to make them say we got to go in and get these jokers, and
Right.
that's what they did. So I thought about as you were talking, I was thinking about how whatever they, wherever they went in there prior to them going in there, they thought about it,
Hmm. That's
they
right.
planned for it,
Hmm.
they prepared for it, and then they executed whatever it was they had to do. They knew exactly what they were going to do. And so it made me think about how we are as typically how we are as women when we
Hmm.
are ready to conquer whatever it is that we're going to conquer, whether it be in our families, in schools, with our children, whatever it is. These women were prepared. So it wasn't to belittle the man at the beginning
Right.
of the movie. It was to
Right.
say we mean business. And
Mm-hmm.
apparently, what these jokers was doing made us feel like we had to go fight.
Yes, I love that. I love that. The perspective of that, what the women had to do is not demeaning the men's role. I love
Mm-mm.
that perspective. Yeah, I love that. And so, of course, they rained down, got their people, and went back home, right? And then just the beauty. I love the beauty. The scenes themselves have beauty in it, right? So when the
Mm-hmm.
women were walking back into the village, right? Oh, that was so good. They were walking back into the village, and everyone was like lowering their gaze. Oh, that
Mm-hmm.
meant so much to me. Like not lowering their gaze because of the physical, but
The
just
respect.
lowering the gaze because of the
Mm-hmm.
strength. Like, yeah, don't look at the, you may not be able to handle this, right? When they tell you like don't shine too bright, right? Like the light's so bright right now, you might go blind, right? Walking through that village, that to me was so very, very, very powerful. And then walking up into the kingdom and seeing what do we see? Just a village of beautiful women, right? Just helping each other and braiding
Mm-hmm.
each other's hair, and let me put some salve on your arm because you got a sore. But just the beauty of women just existing in their own space, and of course we gotta be able to talk about the wives. And I did say wives, as in more than one, right?
Right.
And so when you look at his wives, what was your perspective in terms of, like, we know in Islam it's 4 wives, but I think he had maybe 7, 8, 9, something like that. But what did you all see when he had several wives there? What were you thinking?
Culture. I was
Mm-hmm.
thinking culture, not oh he's a polygamist, or I wasn't thinking none of that. I was thinking it was
Mm-hmm.
just their culture for them to have um that many wives. I mean, they had hundreds of wives back in the Bible times. Okay,
Yeah,
they had
okay,
lots of
right,
them,
right,
lots of them.
right,
But it wasn't because he was, the pimp on New Jack City. He was just,
right,
that's just what they did.
right,
And so I
right.
just thought about the culture of that time.
I also thought about culture as well, and I liked that this was one of the first times a movie has portrayed polygyny, in an African place, in a positive light. There
Mm-hmm.
was no disrespect of the women. The women were
Right.
beautiful. They were presented in a way where they looked like they were very well taken care of, which is something you don't
Yes.
see when people are practicing polygyny in some of the communities. They be kind of broke sometimes,
Right,
you don't
right.
look at it like that. So I was really happy to see those women were taken care of. You know what I mean? They
Right.
Yes.
were happy. They weren't fighting each other, like,
Mm-hmm.
bickering and stuff. So I love that because it showed that not only were they being taken care of, but they were respected, and they also
Mm-hmm.
respected their own positions. I wish I saw a little bit more of that main wife because I feel like she was like pretty, and I don't know if she had a lot of skills, because she was really jealous about everyone
Right.
else's skills, but that happens.
Yeah.
Did
Some
you
people,
did you say
Shantae.
main,
right?
did you say the main wife? Yasmin,
I'm sorry, what did you say?
say the main wife.
Yeah, I shouldn't have said that. But
So
the
part
wife who got the most screen
to
time
say
is
that
going
because, and I
to
don't
say
know
that.
if because they highlighted her more, but I was kind of thinking the same thing, like her being, I don't know, number one or something. Like it's like she
Hmm.
this stature, this position, and even with all of that, and with the wives, he still tried to hold a position and let them know, like, hey, because I am the king here, like, I'm still the person in charge.
Yeah, he did that a couple of times in the movie. Like, no, she doesn't speak for me. Like, yeah, I can speak for my own self. But I
Yeah.
think also, if I'm not mistaken, inside of the movie, she was new on the scene. And sometimes when the new wife comes on the scene, that you have to spend more time with her over a certain period of time. So it could be that, hey, she was new on the scene as opposed to maybe he had been with the other wives longer. And that's just a perspective. That's not necessarily saying that that's what it was. But and that's probably why sometimes it appeared as though she was the main one. But even still, in that, there's no jealousy or anything amongst them, because it was a beautiful scene toward the end, where she had on that beautiful purple and they were celebrating, and the wives came over. They were like, "You look so beautiful," like just complimenting her as a co-wife and saying, this, you deserve this, you deserve. And so to me, that was beautiful, that they again didn't have any animosity amongst each other. So how did he die? But one thing that kind of stuck out as well was that the wives were taken care of by a not so wife, right, but by a black homosexual man. And so when
Mm.
you think about, like, this black homosexual man that's kind of like over the courtyard, what was that about? Because again, anytime we have any depiction of a strong black woman, and we use that language loosely, they always manage to creep in something that degrades the black men. So now we have a homosexual man that's standing there that does not even represent kind of like what the strength of the black man to hold a family together. What do you all think?
I thought it was a few things. And my thoughts might be a little different because when I was watching it, I noticed that they mentioned he was a eunuch, and that's
Hmm.
I
a man
see.
that has been castricized. And so I know
Right.
in history, as far as like Asia and India, that
Mhm.
has been a common thing to have eunuchs in places of that type of position for women's courts.
Right.
And I think
Right.
in the Bible is I think it's mentioned in the book of Genesis about a eunuch, that was
Mhm.
in that
Mhm.
type of position. And I thought it was interesting that they might have been trying to put that in it, but it also was this thing that there's always this expected alliance of homosexual men Black men with Black women. It's just expected that they understand what we've been through because of something. You know what I mean? So I thought that was how they were trying to play it. You know what I mean? Because he had a role, but it wasn't like I didn't see him doing much other than walking. Like if he was protecting them, I don't know how. What was he doing?
Right.
I didn't see any
Right.
actual action other than him walking around. So I didn't get the whole part. So I was like, maybe they just tried to throw a few things in there. And that's where they went and just gave up, you know, because I didn't see the protection.
Okay.
Yeah. With that, to me, when I saw it, number one, I because I think there's always an agenda with everything, and now, especially nowadays, uh, not with just this movie, but with television shows, commercials, everything has to depict the homosexual in it. It just happens now.
Yeah.
It's just almost expected.
Yeah.
But he, to me, in the movie, he didn't have. When you got all that many wives, what are you gonna do with that many? I mean, what is a eunuch gonna do? You got 25 wives. What is the eunuch gonna do? Right?
Right.
You said he's sashaying around there harder than them, but what is he doing? I'm with you, Jasmine.
Yeah,
I have to read it right. But you know, to me, I just didn't understand what his purpose was in the
Right.
movie and just period. When you got that many women who are naturally nurturers, you know, who are nurturers by nature, they know how to take care of themselves, and you got him in the midst of all these women. I mean,
yeah,
to
you
do
have
what?
the ecology. That's their job, is to protect the kingdom. Like, what do you do?
Right, and they ain't no way. You got the woman king up in there and the warriors.
Right.
They tear his behind up. He would have no chance in the army or the fight or nothing. He
Right.
wouldn't have no chance. He was just an accessory to the kingdom.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was just interesting that they put that dynamic in there.
Yeah.
But then as the movie goes along, we see, you know, all of this training that happens. And then at the end of the, not at the, all the way at the end, but at one perspective of the training, they have a scene where a man and a woman have a dagger, right, between the two of them. And they're both pressing the dagger into their chest, almost like in a tug of war, right? And I thought that this was really, really interesting, but I'd love to hear you all's perspective on that.
I can't. Were they fighting or were they?
They were just
They were not.
standing. They were standing.
Pushing.
And they were pushing it, and then she basically was pushing forward, and he was walking back.
You know, it's kind of like you said with the tug of war. I think it was, again, you know, the male versus female is what I was feeling like. And then even in the end, when when she's taking these steps forward, he's taking the steps backwards, and then he went on and threw the towel in. You know, they're both getting stabbed and bleeding a little bit, but he's just like, okay, I give up. I throw the towel in. But just even thinking about the victory in the end and how the women's responses were, so it was like that was a big deal. You know,
Yeah.
To have that win, you know, was just kind of like, we did it. We're stronger. We're empowered. We're the ones that are empowered here. Now I think that that's where the struggle could be. You know, when so now it's the battle of the sexes, and not just that, but as Black people, you know, the men, the women, and I think we kind of deal with that a lot today in so many different forms. You know?
Right. Right.
Yeah, I would agree, Neff. I think there's this whole presentation of I can do whatever you can do when it comes to, you know, men and women, and that's not something I necessarily agree with. I absolutely would not have made it, you know, if that was me. Right. Like, you won, it's good, you know what I mean? Because the reality is I know my limits, you know, and I don't need to prove that to anyone else. But I think because they were in the position they were in, they had to, even if they had the emotions of I can't do this, they have to show that in my mind, I got to show somebody I can do it in order for you to believe I'm a warrior. But I think that in society, that happens all the time, that people are put in positions where it's like, you can do whatever a man can do, or a man's thinking you can do whatever a woman can do. And sometimes that's not the reality. You know what I mean? And I think it can be a negative narrative to push, because people are put in positions that they don't really believe in, but they're trying to fit what everyone else thinks.
Right.
The part too that I think is important. And if we think about the women who were warriors, if they were warriors, that means they didn't get married. That means they didn't have children. And some of them got
Mhm.
there, you know, we know the one that got sent there because her father was like, you know, nobody would marry her because she just wouldn't, I'm going to use the word submit to whatever. Well, oh, she just, you know, I think I would hit him too. I was like, what? Like, he just liked her, like, no, look, because you got to treat your woman right. Like, you just can't
Right. Right.
go to blows too. But at the same time, these women were different women. You know, the warriors were different mindsets from the women who were wives. You know, so you know, it was just kind of a unique kind of situation, and for them to take that position and say, "Hey, we have to stand the ground and be strong in this area." It just was different from.
And it was almost like the perspective was like the warrior women were kind of like uh, they had to have gone through some intense struggle already to even be considered a warrior. So it's almost as if they went through a passage, whatever way they got there. That passage was, you have already been through a rough patch. So now, because you almost are, as one of the scenes that she was talking about, they took everything from me, like when she was being raped and all of these different things. She's almost emotionless. And to be a warrior, one of the sayings in there is like, to be a warrior, you have to kill your tears, right? And it's almost like they wanted or they needed for them to be emotionless, because you can't be a warrior full of emotion, right? Like you know, no tears, you can't be crying, so, you know, all that stuff. So it's almost like they had to have already been in a specific place in their life in order to be there. And it was interesting because of again, the young girl, when they were in the water, and the older lady, Viola Davis, was talking to her, and she was telling her, you know, you've had it easy, and she kept trying to prove to her, I haven't had it easy, right? I haven't had it easy. But and I think sometimes we have to, it's almost like in order to show people that we're powerful, we have to prove that we've been weakened. Y'all think
Mm.
that? And that's kind of like, how can you, we know that there are times when we are weak, but why do we have to always be weakened to the lowest of the low in order for us to then be seen in a powerful light? What do you think about that?
It made me immediately think about this whole narrative of an angry black woman. You know, I work in
Mm,
corporate America and I'm in a leadership position, and I'm never expected to have any emotion. It's just I'm always
mm,
supposed to be a leader and strong and not feel anything, because if I do, then there's a possibility that someone might think that I'm creating an alliance with them. That's what I was told. You know, even when I was
oh,
going through my hiring, is they were like, you have to be careful because people, if they think you understand them too much, they might not respect you anymore and think that, you know, y'all are on the same team. And I'm like, damn, but it's a sister in here and I know what she's going through. And maybe there's a young Muslim here, you know, that I can relate to and I know what she's going through. Or maybe she got cramps and I know what it's like to be
right.
having cramps and you at work, you know what I mean? Those kind of things. But I had to program my mind in a sense where I had to turn that
Mm,
stuff off because I did mess up a couple of times and received those IMs from a person that was beyond, like, lower than me. And I'm like, yeah, girl, that kind of thing. And here she go next week. Remember, you my home girl, and I want to take a couple of days
Mm.
off. And it's like, I can't give you any days off. You know what I mean?
oh no.
That's what happens. And so I think
Yes.
that's one of the things that happen in the movie as well is when you let your empathy go too far, it could be a
Mm,
danger, you know, to an enemy who doesn't care about your empathy at all. They just trying to
Mm.
destroy you, you know what I mean? So
mhm.
you have to be intentional about when you're empathetic, and most of the times it's not when you're in that leadership role in front of the crowd. Because she showed some weakness with her homegirl, you know, when they were in the room and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So I think it's a time and place for it, and you have to be intentional. But for Black women, it's heavy because if you do too much, you're either an angry Black woman or you need to talk to HR because you too, you know. So
Right. And her
Yeah.
HR was the king, right?
I,
Mhm.
It's like,
Mhm.
you need to go talk to the king. And the
Yeah.
king was like, what? Okay. So there was one part where it says this is kind of like um after, you know, when they basically the bad man came and was like, oh, I want 40 women, blah blah, 20 women, whatever. She had to take the 20 women to him,
Mhm.
and she was like, I'm not giving up these women for you, right? She kicked out all the dead heads of these. I don't know what men she killed to get those heads, but um, and and after they jumped over the ledge and jumped into the water, they're trying to swim back, and she's telling the young girl, "We are a goji. We move together as one, right?
This accent.
One purpose." But moving together with one purpose only works as what her friend was trying to tell her. You change the plan, right? So just thinking about like how even us as Black women, how we can move together with a purpose, but the plan has to be consistent. We have to have a consistent plan. And I guess, Yasmin, that's the story you just told about your homegirl who wasn't your homegirl, who like, you're like, yeah, girl, we moving together with one purpose. And she's like, girl, yeah, now I need some days off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
no, boo, you're messing my whole life up. But yeah, what do you all think about moving together in one purpose? Because I know we hear this in different ways, but how can we as Black women make this benefit not just for us but for our families? How can we move that in a bigger way?
I think it's number one, um, and I'm gonna kind of revert a little bit
Mm-hmm.
back to something you said about them being chosen to be the warriors.
Mm-hmm.
All of them had to make a decision, so they were not forced into that space of
Yeah.
fighting
Mm-hmm.
to be a warrior. And I think what happens is sometimes we put people on our teams that are not warriors and who
Mm-hmm.
never made a conscious decision to fight with us, right? And so when you
Ooh,
put
say that
people
again.
on a team and they were never meant to be your teammate,
Mm-hmm.
then when sometimes they do change the plan because their motive and the direction they're going is totally different than what your motive is. These
Mm-hmm.
women had a plan, right? They
Mm-hmm.
had to train together. They had to do all this stuff, and then they had to be proven in the training. All of them went through the training simultaneously,
Mm-hmm.
but not all of them came out with the same strength. And
Right.
so she only chose the women who were strong enough to be on the team. You couldn't
Mm-hmm.
be Carol and be on the team.
Or
Okay.
you guys
I
me
wouldn't have made the cut.
or me.
I wouldn't have I've been trying to fix this curl that's been wearing me out since we've been on here. They say, no, she's too distracted. She's too distracted. Right?
She's
I
not
wouldn't
there,
have
homie.
She's not. She ain't trying to go that way. She is trying to figure out where the closest mirror is to fix that curl. And I would have got killed. I would have got killed. But I think it's really important. I think it's really important that you know who is on your team, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that you are of the same one band, one sound. That
Yes.
you're of the same mental place. You're in the same mental place, and I think that's why we, as specifically Black women, cannot move together because a lot of our directions are so different.
Mm-hmm.
You got people who they want to. Some people just want to be cute, and some people want to be cute for a purpose. It's two different kinds of, it's two
Right.
different things going on right here. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think it's very important that we understand that we know who wants to move in that direction, not who
Yes.
we force to move in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you got to force somebody to do something that's not a passion for them,
Mm-hmm.
it's work for them. It's work,
Yeah.
and so it
Yeah.
makes it that much harder for you to move forward in things like that. And
Mm-hmm.
with a common purpose or a common goal or just trying to see each other get better and all that. Everybody don't want to get better.
Right.
True.
Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth?
No.
Yes. No.
Mm-mm.
One thing that came to my mind, we had my mom on last year sometime with her book. You have the sense that God gave a boost, and so when you think about the geese and how they transform and work with each other, when you were talking about everybody's not on the same, and when you think about that V formation, and so
Mm-hmm.
everybody's not all not the same one is always at the top in that V. Sometimes they have to fall back. Sometimes when one gets sick, one stays back there with them. And so I think it's just a matter of one of the things we can maybe get into in a little bit is sisterhood.
Mm-hmm.
Having that love and caring for, which kind of reminds me of that part of the scene where she had to fall back to help the girl come to the
House.
whatever or the trenches, the torches in the trenches through the
Right.
all the branches. And I'm like, oh, and she turned around and went back, to help. And not everybody will do that.
Right.
Sometimes even, our real life situations when we see our sisters down and we need the help. And so I think that's part of us being able to work in unity and just be together and, just helping one another through whatever the situation is so that you can progress, and develop into the
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of also led into the next quote, right? Because again, they asked her after the event was over, like, why did you go back for her? And she kept saying, oh, that's my friend. And then of course the leader again, she says, yes, but to be useful, she must stand on her own.
Mm.
And that's also important in a team, right?
Right.
You can't have one person on the team sucking up all the energy of everybody else, right? You have that one friend who's always asking you for advice, always asking, take, and they don't really give. And so that's also important in terms of like being able to move forward. You have to be useful on your own.
Yeah. That made me think about also our communities, though, because if you have a lot of people who are in a collective community who haven't bought into the vision of the community, and they don't really know what it is, they're just there, and they are not useful on their own because they're not offering anything, to the community. Because I can be on my own, but also reflect the vision of the community because I've bought into it. So my actions are giving back to my community in the end, and I'm representing the community as well. But I have my own special things to offer. I'm not just, a person who takes or just sits there doing nothing. You know what I mean? So that made me think of our community with so many people who are just there and not offering anything.
Yeah.
That's because some of them are just a monument and some of them are a movement.
I love
it. Some of them just.
They just
no, my screen ain't frozen. They just a monument. They just there. And the other ones are a movement.
If you hear me calling somebody a monument, now you know why.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that.
Ain't going nowhere.
Okay. And next we're going to talk about the significance of the blood cutting, right? And we know that for women, blood is so powerful. Just so many different ways that blood is spiritual for us, right? That blood is relational for us, right? That blood is almost like the deep connection between us and our creator, right? And then you have the significance where everyone is cutting their arms and to signify their sisterhood. What did you think about that?
Well, one of the first things I noticed about that was they actually were smiling, like, and it was just like, I was like, don't that hurt? Hey, I'm next. Yes, get mine. Get some for me. But to get that and everybody combining their blood together, it was just, I don't know, it was kind of a powerful thing, to me. And it was like everybody wanted to have that, put that piece in there. Like, wow. But that was one of the big things that stood out to me was that they were smiling, they were happy to do it. It's like they understood just the power of the image of itself.
And it made me immediately think about this whole term of like blood brothers and blood sisters. All of them came there from different backgrounds, but they had to really believe that they were acting as one unit, one family. Just like I would if I had the same blood as you. You know what I mean? I'm going to treat you a certain way because we have the same blood. So doing that, it's like I'm doing this because I want to be, seen as a collective, together. And I'm here with you and see me as your sister, just like you would if I had the same blood. And in the end, then they gave that as a sacrifice to a deity, you know what I mean? Which is, in my mind, we think like how powerful is a prayer that you give dua or you give dhikr, because you're seeing this as a powerful thing. I thought it was seen in that same way, that they were giving this collective coming together as I guess a donation to their deity. I don't know the best word right now, but I thought that was pretty amazing to see that. And to see that they were smiling because I wasn't. And
they had on white, honey.
And it was a lot of blood too.
It was a lot of blood, and they had on white. Like they wasn't even trying to. They didn't even get dirty, right?
Yeah. But you know what? A warrior can't be afraid to bleed.
Yeah.
Can't be afraid to bleed, whether it's voluntary or involuntary. So they're gonna do more bleeding than that as spiders. So you know, thinking about maybe how they were conditioned in their mind, how they trained, all of that kind of stuff. Um, to cut themselves and them smiling doing it was nothing compared to them fighting up against a spear or whatever it was that cut them. So warriors cannot be afraid to bleed,
Yeah.
no matter how it comes out. They can't be
Right.
afraid to bleed.
Right. That's beautiful. Okay. Then we go on to the trap. They always have to have a trap in the movie where the woman is focused on something and then the trap comes in, right?
Right.
So then, of course, you have this man
He was
who
fine.
is
He was fine though. I'm not
okay.
even, I'd have been trapped too because I was like,
Ah,
Like, Brother Malik. Assalamu alaikum.
right.
crazy.
But Malik comes in and again, a mixed man, right? Black and white. And although his mother was from the Dahomey tribe, it also is speaking so much about who her partner was, right?
Mhm.
Because never do you ever hear him even speaking about his father, right? Meaning that it sounded like his father, the white man, was absent, and that maybe his father may have taken something from his mother, because if it was from a loving relationship, there would have been more love cultivated in that story, and it wasn't, right? So then you think about the whole struggle of taking again from women, but then uh you know people started noticing, the energy between people. It's just like, as soon as it happened, you just start noticing the energy. So they had energy amongst each other. And so one of the women, one of her sisters was trying to explain to her, you are powerful, more powerful than you don't even realize, right? Don't give your power away.
Mm.
What do you think the power is that women have that we often give away? I mean, I know what I think it is, but what do y'all think it is?
I just immediately thought about this whole movement that happened with Amber Rose with the slut movement that happened, where
Mm-hmm.
there was this idea to change the narrative of sex and that
Mm-hmm.
you should be able to give it to anyone that you want to, and that means
Right.
you're happy, in the end. And they were forgetting the fact that being entered, and having sex is a gift that someone
It
should
is.
Mhm.
feel as a gift. They should not feel like anybody can have it, in that
Right.
way. And so it made me immediately think about just our generation and the younger ones that are coming after us that see sex as not a thing that's sacred anymore. It's just something
Mm-hmm.
I do if I
Yeah.
want to. Just like going into the kitchen, making some chicken. Maybe I'll make a teriyaki or barbecue if I feel like.
Right.
Like it's not that simple because this can lead to a child. This can lead to your emotions. Every time you have sex with someone, you keep that energy with you every
Yeah.
time. You know what I mean? And so thinking of it as a gift and not giving that power away to anyone, is you have control in a way of your emotions and all of that in a way that other people do not. So I thought that was really powerful. But I
Yeah.
did feel sad because I did want her to hook up with Malik at some point. Just selfishly, I did. Alhamdulillah, if they got married, but I just wanted her to have some happiness in that way. But that's my own nafs or weakness, speaking.
Right.
So
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of wanted that too. Separation, but you can see that how they connected. When he was leaving, and they were both kind of telling each other, "Okay, we understand where we're at." But I just think they had such a connection. And then with his mother, because at this point, he was just like, "No, we can't do this." I love how he unleashed the men on that guy. It's like, but what it said to me is once we get our, if our men are not shackled, locked down, and suppressed to a certain point, like how they can move in unison together as well to handle things, like move forward together. And so that's like what I was seeing with that. And then they did, they dealt with him, deal with it.
Right.
But as far as with them, I do feel like she was not able to continue being on top of her game because he was a distraction as well, you know.
Yeah.
So, and I could see why, that's just like, Yasmin kind of used the example of her work. A lot of times when you're a wife and a mother, and you're at work, you almost can't show that those sensitivities as well, or things that's happening at home, or when your child gets sick, or when this, all these different things that are going on that don't relate to your job, but you still have to make sure you get your job done.
Right.
So for her, I think that it was kind of taken away, her focus where it
Yeah.
needs to be in certain points. So
Mhm.
that's like was saying, you can't be a wife and be here at the same time. You
Mhm.
got the other.
Right. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Nefertari. I think because she had already committed to being a warrior, giving her power away would mean she would have to choose. Because at that point, she couldn't serve two masters, right? It was either him or what she was going to be doing as a warrior. And so it was. I mean, it would be a distraction for me too. He got long hair, good hair. I
I can't with you, Karen.
He got all that good hair. It'd be such a distraction. Good Lord. And so, but she would have definitely struggled with that because they were very disciplined. They had to be disciplined as women
Right.
warriors, more so than men because naturally their strength. They don't have strength like a man. Naturally, no woman has strength like a man.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
not in their natural form. You take all that stuff they give you to take and pump up stuff and do all that, you might get some muscles and be strong. But naturally, it takes more for us to focus and more for us to fight in a space like that. It takes more
Right.
than a man because we weren't naturally given that
Mhm.
strength.
Yeah. And then I personally felt like she did give away her power. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one that thinks
Mm.
that, but yeah, I thought she gave away her power at some point. That's why she was able to put on um, another piece of garment. So I don't know if anybody saw the symbolism
Oh yeah.
that she was able to take off the garment that was her protection, which was basically her armor, right? The look of her sisters, the uniformity. And when she put that other garment on that he gave her, to me, that
Mm.
was almost like I have I have sacrificed I have made a commitment to my sisters, but I have also sacrificed myself for you. And it was just interesting that it
Mm.
was white, right?
Mm.
And that it was almost like she was trying to be an adult, but she didn't have the maturity to carry it on. So to me, it was like, oh yeah, girl, you did give up your power, right? So yeah, to me, there was some power that was given up. And then when they were talking about how love makes us weak, and this is something that again we've been talking about this the whole time, how Black women kind of sometimes can't, um, if we are emotional, it's a sign of weakness, which is really the opposite of what we were actually our nature is. The sign of strength is that we are emotional, that we do love, that we do feel, that we're actually human. And that to me was something that was interesting in the story as well.
So what do you think? What do you think about because apparently she grew up in a space where her dad was some kind of man, and
Hmm.
um, he was
Well,
trying to
she,
give her away to somebody that wasn't good for her, that would hit her and all of that kind of stuff. So maybe she was torn between not ever seeing or being exposed to somebody who really showed her love, something she had
yeah,
never seen before, which is what made her vulnerable to change her garment to him. I don't think she would have changed her garment if she felt like he was the other man. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that could be as a sign of weakness so much as it is as her being exposed to something she had never been privy to. Because we do that too. We do that too as women when we have grown up in areas or in family dynamics where we haven't quite seen um, how a man really loves a woman, and then somebody comes along like that. It can be a distraction for us because we've never seen it. It doesn't mean it's wrong or anything like that, but we're more we're more vulnerable in those spaces where a man is treating us in ways that we feel like that we like to be treated or loved like we like to be loved. And so the clothes were a sign of taking care of her. She was all dirty and all of that stuff. And he cleaned, I don't know if he cleaned up or she cleaned herself. I don't know what happened with that, but maybe it was um, just a space of vulnerability at that moment. She was able to be vulnerable with him as opposed to any other man she's ever come in contact with, you know?
And he started,
I don't know.
about him, that how he started the process with her hands. He got the water in a bowl and started with her hands and trying to, and just how he cared for her while he was going through that process and the gentleness that he was showing. So I understand what you're saying. I said you got a good point there too, with just him showing her another side that she never witnessed that before.
Right. Yeah. And
And
it
so
can be
all of
hard.
that's beautiful.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it's all beautiful because again, it's all perspective. It's about like what you're thinking at the time and where the movie actually has so many again different stories that
Right.
you depending upon where you are even in your own personal life how you see the movie it shows
Mm-hmm.
up in different ways as well, so that's something that's very very beautiful in and of itself. And we're almost down to the last time, but the last thing we want to talk about is the when she was talking about the dream early in the story, but at the end of the story she talks about the beast and how the beast was something that she was afraid of and everything, but really she realized that the beast was herself. How
Mm,
she had spent so much time denying her pain and how she had spent so much time trying to hide herself from all of the different things that she had experienced. And that's where the trauma comes from, right?
mhm,
And so we begin to live these trauma-ridden lives and we can't find our whole self. But if as soon as she became aware of, man, this is what I have denied myself, you could just tell it was it was like a
shift.
relief. You
Mhm.
saw her whole body begin to find relief. And tell me about what you all thought about that part.
This is something that was personal for me. I know you were talking about how we watch movies and you get something different at different points wherever you are. I thought it was interesting because I remember when I first started going to therapy, and the therapist was talking about this whole idea of healing your inner child. And I had been hearing that so much on social media. I'm like, oh my God, not you telling me the same thing. Everybody keeps saying this. It just seemed trendy, you know what I mean? Because you think, your life is good. I don't have issues. I had a great childhood, you know what I mean? But then you start thinking about patterns you have in your adult relationship with your friends or your partners, and you don't have no idea like where did this come from, you know what I mean? Because you don't see your parents in a bad light because you love your mom,
Mhm.
you love your dad, but you have no idea that your mom may have taken on some habits, that she saw her mother do and they were unhealthy, and you took them on because that was the first example you had, you know what I mean? And so for me, I experienced that where I was going through emotions like, wow, there's some things that I do that aren't great, you know what I mean? And I'm blaming all the people that were my partners for this thing. You know what I mean? Like, you did this and you made me weak and you was emotionally abusive or whatever. When in reality, I was normal. I was common to receive that because it's something I saw my mom do. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
so I think that that's something that's reflective of Black women in general, that we internalize so much when it comes to our children and our families in general, that we just see so much and we just take it all in, and we're not expected to deal with it. You know what I mean? But when she dealt with it, it was productive. You know what I mean? So if for me, I was thinking about how so many people don't get the opportunity to deal with it. They just have to
Mhm.
internalize it and they just keep living, and they're unhealthy and they end up with cancer or whatever the side effects are of stress and grief, but she healed herself and her relationship with her child, you know what I mean,
Mhm.
from identifying what was the main issue and actually being interested in figuring it out, you know what I mean, and doing something about it, as opposed to saying, yep, I was abused when I was little and then that's it. You do nothing. So I was proud of her and proud of any woman and myself, for taking the initiative to heal that type of thing.
Yeah. I was just gonna say that's what turns a lot of people into warriors. That internal fight. Everybody ain't driven like that, and everybody doesn't have the same strength. And some of the people with the greatest strength are some of the people who have experienced the most trauma, and had the most lives of trauma. And that's why they are able to fight like that, because they have been in a fight, whether they were in their childhood, as you were saying, Jasmine, or something like that, that has caused them to, it's like the Color Purple movie. I had to fight all my life. I had to fight my uncles. I had to fight my daddy. I had to fight, I had to fight all my life. So even in that movie, when you see her, she's a fighter. That wasn't birthed out of just the fact that I want to be a fighter. It was birthed out the fact that it was a family origin of her having to do that based off of abuse and based off of her being treated as a child, and it turned her into the very thing she despised. Right?
Mhm.
She became a fighter in that movie, but in this movie, part of her being as strong as she was as a warrior was having to endure what she went through, by being raped and her child being taken from her and all of that. Kind of that'll make me a fighter too. And now I seek to kill every man I see looks like the man that hurt me.
Yeah. Yeah.
That happens in people's lives every day.
Every day.
They punish people for things that they have gone through because what they see in some kind of way, they can't get out the trauma that has happened to them in life. So everybody is a representative of that until they deal with it from a healthy space, which is why therapy is so important and counseling is so important. So you can deal with that. Otherwise, you become, nobody wants to, you know, it's okay to fight, but it's also not okay to fight. There can be two fights going on at the
Right.
same time, and one of them is warranted and one of them is not. And some people don't even know how to fight in their lives. So I think it's so important, and I'm glad that the story had that twist where she was able to reconvene with her daughter, and they were kindred spirits.
Hmm.
They were kindred spirits, and so I think you know she knew right off. I think she knew she felt something in her spirit that was her daughter. But I'm glad the movie kind of went like that. The movie was better than that part. I won't say it out loud. I'll just do that
I love you. Forever, forever, forever.
forever.
Well, thank you so much, ladies. We have reached the top of the hour and we are going to close out. But again, alhamdulillah, thank you. All praises due to God. This was an exhilarating discussion because, again, the perspectives, always being able to just kind of, even to have this beautiful imagery of women on the screen, but really taking away from it, not this rah, 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 women power, we're the strongest, we can do everything, but just really understanding how we fit into the whole puzzle of the world, we would say, and how we can still be
Oh, I think she froze.
Oh no.
positive and all of
Well,
these
look.
different. Uh-oh.
Oh,
Internet.
oh, you
Froze up.
you
You back
froze.
now. Okay.
Internet.
Melinda,
What?
Melinda. Before you end, can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
So at the end of the movie, one of the things that I appreciated about the movie was when they made her woman king. Did you notice how they were sitting? The man was still elevated above her. I
Yes.
love that. I
Yes.
love that because
Yes.
it said to me that there is still a place for the man and the woman in a relationship.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean it didn't take anything away from her to be down here and him be up here.
Yes.
I
Yes.
love
When they're working together, it showed the submission of a man and a woman, which is what we're missing a lot.
Yes. That's beautiful.
But
Yes.
I love that.
You
Yes.
know, Carol, I just want to mention one thing to Naima. When she said that, and I was glad in the end that it was that, because, there was a point in the movie where she had to disobey him and make the move on her own and be like, this is what's best, and I got to go. We got to go do this.
Right.
And so, and when you talk about that sisterhood, because she didn't ask somebody else to come, she was going to go by herself, and they all came. I was like, wow, that was so awesome.
Yeah.
For her to come back and, you know, and then she still was humble and respectful to him as she stood before him. And he understood that. And it was like they made the connection and was able to move forward with that. And so I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah.
And to me, that kind of shows, you know, when you think about relationships and the man and a woman in different times, and different situations that go on in there, and how you can resolve things and come back out on top, so to speak, you know. So
yes, excellent take. Excellent take. Great, great, great. And again, this was another exhilarating episode of Rock the Crown. Share it with all your friends and family. But again, we want to make sure that you subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Instagram. And until next week, we have something juicy coming for you for next week. A lot, very, very spiritual. So make sure that you check in next week. But thank you so much again, Crown Nation. We'll see you next time. Peace.